Today's lesson is on polynomials. We have different types of polynomials. We have monomials that consist of one term, binomials that consist of two terms, trinomials that are three terms, and so forth, but they are all referred to as polynomials. Let's look at this first review problem. Mina simplified the expression shown below. Her final answer was in the form a to the power of m, b to the power of n. If she simplified the expression correctly, what is the value of n, the exponent on b? So let's just recall that when we are multiplying terms, that as long as they have the same base, like the a cubed times the a squared, that we keep the base and we add the exponents. So 3 plus 2 would be 5. And then we look at the b, so we keep the b and we add the exponents, negative 6 plus 2, which would be negative 4. Well, if we look here at the form that her answer is in, we can answer the question that says, what is the value of n, which is the exponent for the b? So we would say that n is equal to negative 4. All right, that's just a good little review. We'll use that here in a little bit. We're going to do some review of adding and subtracting polynomials, which we have done earlier in the year. So let's start out with number 1. We have a binomial plus another binomial. So we're adding two binomials together. And while we're adding the binomials together, we can combine like terms. So we have a positive 3x and a negative 2x. So 3x plus a negative 2x would be 1x. And then we could combine positive 2 and negative 8. So 2 plus a negative 8 would be a negative 6. Now, very likely you will normally see this written as x minus 6 because it is insinuated and understood that there is a 1 as a coefficient in front of the x, even though we do not show it. All right, I'm actually going to skip down to number 3, and once I do this one, I'm going to give you a moment to pause the video and do number 2 and 4. All right, so on number 3, we have a trinomial plus another trinomial. So we're adding two trinomials together. We do the same idea here. I would start out with the term that has the highest exponent, which is going to be the x squared terms. So we're going to have positive 5x squared and a positive 6x squared. That adds up to 11x squared. And then after we add the terms that have the x squared, we go and look for any terms that have x to the first power, which are just the terms that have the x. So that would be a negative 2x and a negative 3x. So a negative 2x plus a negative 3x is a negative 5x. And then we add the positive 1 and the positive 7, which makes a positive 8. Now, please make sure you understand that there is nothing to solve here. These are not equations. We are simply just simplifying some expressions here by adding binomials or trinomials. We're adding polynomials. So if you would, pause this, try number 2 and 4, and then start it back up and check your answers. Okay, I'm hoping that you did these on your own so that I can quickly just show you what the answers were. These would add up to a negative 4x, and then 2 and negative 2 would make 0. It would just cancel out, so the answer would just be negative 4x. On number 4, we would add the 9x squared and the 3x squared. We would get 12x squared. Then we would go and look at the 5x and the negative 2x, which would end up being a positive 3x if we add those together. And then a negative 7 and a positive 5 adds up to negative 2. All right, again, that should all be reviewed. That was basically in the section where we did combining like terms. That's just adding and subtracting polynomials. Or sorry, that was adding polynomials. Now we're going to do subtracting polynomials, which again, we've done this already. So we're going to subtract two trinomials here. This is like a minus 1 here because of this subtraction here, we're subtracting this entire trinomial. So this subtraction sign needs to apply to all three of these terms. So we're actually going to distribute it through before we get started here. I'm going to drop down the x squared plus 3x minus 1, and then I'm going to distribute negative 1 times 7x squared is a negative 7x squared. Negative 1 times negative 5x is a positive 5x. and negative 1 times 6 is a negative 6. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I just did with the adding polynomials. I'm going to start with the larger exponent, which we have an x squared here, that's a 1x squared, and a negative 7x squared. So when we add that together, we get a negative 6x squared. And then when we go and look at the positive 3x and the positive 5x, that will add up to a positive 8x. And then negative 1 plus a negative 6 is a negative 7. And so when we subtract these two trinomials, we end up with an answer that is a trinomial. All right, I'm going to do number 7 with you, and then I'm going to leave you to do 2 on your own again. Okay, so I'm going to distribute this negative 1 through, so I have 5x plus 2. Distribute negative 1 times negative 9x is a positive 9x, and negative 1 times negative 2 is a positive 2. Combining like terms, we can add 5x and 9x together. 5x plus 9x would be 14x, and then 2 plus 2 would be plus 4. Okay, if you would, please pause it, try number 6 and 8, and then start it back up and see how you did. Okay, let's see how you did on number 6. Okay, so I'm going to distribute this minus here. So I'm going to bring down my negative x plus 3x squared minus 2 minus 4x squared plus x minus 8. I'm going to combine my 3x squared with my negative 4x squared, which is going to be a negative 1x squared. Then I'm going to look at the negative x plus x, which makes 0. And then negative 2 plus a negative 8 is a negative 10. On number 8, again, I need to distribute that negative 1, so I bring down my 3x plus 2. That's going to end up being a plus 2x and a plus 8. Add my like terms together, and I get 5x, and then 2 plus 8 is going to be plus 10. Okay, so we've done our adding and subtracting of polynomials. Now we're going to move on to multiplication of polynomials, which is new. So we're going to start with number 9, and all this is distributive property. So this really shouldn't be too bad, but we're going to take this kind of slow. We do need to, I would encourage you to write down all of the steps. So if we do 3x times negative 2x, 3 times negative 2 would be a negative 6. And then remember, when we are multiplying terms, that we add the exponents. So this would be a negative 6x squared. Then I'm going to do 3x times negative 8, which is going to be a negative 24x. Then 2 times negative 2x, which is a negative 4x. And 2 times negative 8, which is a negative 16. After I get all of that multiplied out, so I've done my distributive property. I distributed the 3x to both terms in the second parenthesis, and then I distributed my positive 2 to both terms in the second parenthesis. Then I look and say, is there anything I could combine at this point? I've done all the multiplication. I just simply want to look for like terms that I can add together. So this negative 6x squared is just going to come down because it is the only term with an x squared. However, notice that these two both have an x, so we can combine those, and that makes a negative 28x. And then we just drop down the negative 16. Okay, let's look at number 11, and then I'm going to give you a couple to try on your own. So negative 2x times 6x squared would be negative 12x to the, add the exponents, so it would be a third power. And then negative 2x times negative 3x would be a positive 6x, add the exponents, squared. And then negative 2x times 7 would be a negative 14x. So we've distributed the negative 2x, and now we're going to distribute the 5. So 5 times 6x squared would be a positive 30x squared. 5 times negative 3x is a negative 15x. And then 5 times 7 would be a positive 35. So first of all, our largest exponent is the cube. So we're going to bring down the negative 12x cubed. We're done with that. Then we notice we have two terms that have a square, so we can add those together and we get 36x squared. And then we have two terms with an x, so we can combine those, add those together, and we get negative 29x. And then drop down the plus 35. And that's your answer. So if you will pause this, please, and try number 10 and 12, then start the video back up and check your answer. Okay, let's see how you did. 5x times negative 9x would be a negative 45x squared. 5x times negative 2 would be a negative 10x. 2 times negative 9x would be a negative 18x, and 2 times negative 2 is a negative 4. So when we combine like terms, we get negative 45x squared minus 28x minus 4. And on number 12, when we do our distributing, 9x times 3x squared would be 27x to the third power. 9x times negative 2x is a negative 18x to the second power. And 9x times 5 would be positive 45x. Moving on to the minus 7. Negative 7 times 3x squared is a negative 21x squared. Negative 7 times negative 2x is a positive 14x. And negative 7 times 5 is a negative 35. So when we combine like terms, we get 27x cubed, negative 39x squared, plus 59x, and then minus 35. Hopefully you got those two correct. All right, and our last operation with polynomials is division. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this trinomial that's in parentheses and we're going to divide it. This is the trinomial. We're going to divide it by this monomial, 2x squared. Now, at first, if you wanted to understand, you understand that division can be written in fraction form. So really, we can write the same question and it look like that. I like to take the 2x squared and write it underneath each of the terms. So I prefer to write it like this. All right, and then when I look at this first portion here, 8 divided by 2 would be 4. And then remember, when we're dividing, as long as we have the same base, we can subtract our exponents. So that would be 4x to the first power, or 4x, plus 4 divided by 2 would be 2, but these x's cancel, so we don't have any x's, minus, and then 12 divided by 2 would be 6. Now this is an x to the first power, so when we do 1 minus 2, we get x to the negative 1 power. There is another option. Remember, if you don't want to have the negative exponent there, you could write your answer as 4x plus 2 minus 6 divided by x this way. So that's another option. Okay, let's look at number 15. I'm going to take the 12x to the 8th power and write divided by 4x to the 4th minus 8x cubed divided by 4x to the 4th. And I'm going to take these one step at a time. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. Subtract the exponents and we get x to the 4th. Minus 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then 3 minus 4 would be a negative 1. So we can write it this way. Or you can write it as 2 over x at the end. All right, if you would pause this, please try the last two, 14 and 16, on your own and then start this back up. Okay, let's see how you did. So on this one, you should get x to the 4th minus x to the 3rd plus x to the 2nd power. And that would be your answer. You can't combine those because they all have different exponents. So when you're adding and subtracting, they have to have the same variable and the same exponent in order to combine them. And 16. Okay, so these would cancel and we'd have c to the 2nd power plus 2c minus, those would cancel, but this has a 1 in front of it. Okay, so it's just going to be minus 1/3. All right, very good. That's the end of our lesson on adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing polynomials.